Hello, this is Jerry, and welcome back to our studies in Nehemiah. We are on part 6, chapter 6. Nehemiah, the governor of Jerusalem, has been challenged by external military threats from 4 different powers, internal social fractures from the nobles enslaving and taking others' land, a low morale and support from around Judah, the fearful warnings of Jews in nearby towns, and even a famine. But all these vexing problems don't seem to have rattled Nehemiah or stopped him from the Jerusalem project, the repairing and building of the walls and gates, so that they can be a safe capital city once again. Not because Nehemiah is impervious to trials. No, he's fully human. These things hurt. But God had nurtured Nehemiah to be both a man of prayer and action. He had prepared him for this Jerusalem mission. But even so, he's learning and growing as he goes. A lot of life can only be learned in context. Now we re-enter the fray in chapter 6. Now when Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem the Arab and the rest of our enemies heard that I had built the wall, and that there was no breach left in it, although up to that time I had not set the doors in the gates, Sanballat and Geshem sent to me, saying, "Come, and let us meet together at Hakkephirim in the plain of Ono." But they intended to do me harm. And I sent messengers to them, saying, "I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you?" And they sent to me 4 times in this way, and I answered them in the same manner. The walls were nearing completion. These enemies are desperate. For some reason, they have not attacked, perhaps because every time they spy on them, the Jews are completely ready. So, a change in plans. Let's talk, just us leaders. Nehemiah's curt reply was basically, "I'm busy in a great project. Why should I leave that for a meeting with you all?" So the Lord gives Nehemiah discernment because they actually intended to harm him. But the letters keep coming. In the same way, Sanballat, for the 5th time, sent his servant to me with an open letter in his hand. In it was written, "It is reported among the nations," and Geshem also says it, "that you and the Jews intend to rebel. That is why you are building the wall. And according to these reports, you wish to become their king. And you also have set up prophets to proclaim concerning you in Jerusalem, 'There is a king in Judah.' And now the king will hear of these reports. So now come and let us take counsel together." Sanballat, the ringleader, gives this slanderous accusation, which he says is doing the rounds, of Nehemiah's intention to be a king and rebel against Persia. And since this will be known soon by the Persian king, Nehemiah needs their support as neighboring leaders to help assure the king. So let's get together. Nehemiah's blunt reply, "Then I sent to him, saying, 'No such things as you say have been done, for you are inventing them out of your own mind.'" Then Nehemiah explains, "For they all wanted to frighten us, thinking their hands will drop from the work, and it will not be done. But now, O God, strengthen my hands." Nehemiah perceives that everything thrown at them was to get them to stop the construction. So Nehemiah prays, "O God, strengthen my hands," that he will have a more firm grip on all that he is doing. A great prayer, to remember. Well, what next? Now, when I went into the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delaiah, son of Mehetabel, who was confined to his home, he said, "Let us meet together in the house of God. Within the temple, let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. They are coming to kill you by night." Well, there are 2 problems here. First, what would it look like for Nehemiah to run and hide? Nobody had been running and hiding so far in this project. Nehemiah has been proclaiming, "Let's fight for the Lord and for our families if need be." To hide in the temple makes Nehemiah look like a coward and goes against what he had been preaching. And second, Nehemiah was not a priest. He's allowed in the temple, but not in the holy place. That would be wrong, which is what the enemy wanted, to accuse and incriminate him. His response? "But I said, should such a man as I run away? And what man such as I could go into the temple and live? I will not go in." And I understood and saw that God had not sent him, but he had pronounced the prophecy against me, because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. For this purpose he was hired, that I should be afraid and act in this way and sin, and so they could give me a bad name in order to taunt me. Then Nehemiah prayed, "Remember Tobiah and Sanballat, O my God, according to these things that they did, and also the prophetess Noadiah and the rest of the prophets who wanted to make me afraid." So Nehemiah prays another imprecatory prayer, a prayer for God to somehow judge those enemies so that the work of God could continue. And we don't know the details about the prophetess Noadiah and those other false prophets, but this reveals another layer of Sanballat's schemes, using people posing as God's prophets to stop Nehemiah, since Nehemiah seems to only listen to God. Now, I have a really exciting short verse to read. I've been waiting for this verse for weeks. "So the wall was finished on the 25th day of the month Elul in 52 days. Well, that was a happy day, after only 2 months. Now, we've been following this work for several weeks on the wall, which gives the impression they've labored longer. The Lord enabled Nehemiah to be this gold standard project manager. And of course, the wall builders did a great job. And when all our enemies heard of it, all the nations around us were afraid and fell greatly in their own esteem, for they perceived that this work had been accomplished with the help of our God. All these attempts to make Nehemiah and the workers afraid so that they would quit working, they didn't work. Instead, the fear is now turned back on the enemies. They are afraid now, which is what Nehemiah has been praying for all along, that the negatives the enemies were intending against the Jews would be turned back on them. And the text says that the enemies were so amazed that they perceived the God of the Jews must have helped them. Okay, the wall is built and finished by October 2nd, 444 BC. However, the dedication of the wall is not until chapter 12. Well, why this delay? Well, chapter 7 gives genealogical lists of names. Chapter 8 informs us that 6 days after the finishing of the wall, they returned to Jerusalem on the 8th of October, which was the Jewish New Year with the Feast of Trumpets. And God sent a great revival then. That's the big event that delayed the wall and gate dedication. Then in chapter 11, Nehemiah moved more people into Jerusalem now that it was safe. Well, who did he move in? Well, we must have a genealogical list to say, so that's all in chapter 11. Finally, in chapter 12, there is the dedication of the wall. I'm eager to share that with you later. So in the sovereignty of God, this dedication was celebrated with a lot more spiritual depth because of that revival. Well, we need a whole class time for chapter 8, so I don't want to start that right now. So let's sneak in something else of interest now while we're talking about the walls and gates. It's time to jump in our time machines again for a very short trip, just 19 years ago. In 2007, Dr. Eilat Matzar, an Israeli archaeologist who sadly passed in 2021, was reinforcing some ancient towers in the old city of David, Jerusalem, because they were in danger of collapsing. she had to dig down to earlier layers, and there she found something heretofore unrevealed in Jerusalem, part of Nehemiah's wall, 2,451 years old. Persian pottery was there, and other archaeological evidence had plenty enough to identify this with certainty. Though, as I said before, they'll never convince all archaeologists because some have that minimalist view that Israel never advanced beyond a relatively small tribe. And so to them, evidence of a larger scale ownership in Israel is just dismissed and alternate explanations are given. Now, before I say more about this discovery, a word about the amazing archaeologist Dr. Matsar. For decades, she uncovered so many important finds corroborating the history of David, Solomon, and the kings. She unashamedly leaned upon the historical accounts within the Jewish scriptures, the Old Testament, and took a lot of ridicule from her colleagues for this. This she learned from her grandfather, Dr. Benjamin Matsar, called the Dean of Biblical Archaeology, who was Jerusalem's first major archaeologist after the birth of Israel in 1948. Wherever he went, Eilert remembers her grandfather consulted the Bible, and then was so successful in finding significant places, like these stairs that led into the temple that Jesus knew. Now back to the wall discovered, as I quote from the Armstrong Institute of Biblical Archaeology in Jerusalem. Studying Nehemiah's account, Dr. Matsar noted the construction of the northern tower and associated wall, which she had scientifically dated to circa 450 BCE. It matched precisely with the biblical account. Not only did the dates match, so did the quality of construction. The tower and wall were not masterpieces of engineering. Their construction quality showed that they had been built hastily, just as Nehemiah recorded. So, these walls were more functional than aesthetic. They were very solid, and that's what they needed. By aesthetic, I mean with the outer surface of the wall being smoothed with hewn stones. That takes a lot of expertise and time. The Jews had neither here. For instance, here's a piece of Emperor Hadrian's wall, built by Roman soldiers in Britain, but these units had engineers and stone masons with them. Notice the nice hewn, flat exterior, except where people over the centuries have taken stones for their own houses. Nehemiah's wall was a functional but rough wall, and was appropriate for the times that they were in, and was what could be done with the non-skilled wall builders. Actually, if they were smoothed and more expertly done, people would wonder, how did the commoners under Nehemiah accomplish this? Notice the person standing in the top right for a size perspective of how large these stones are. Okay, back to the article. Beneath the 5-foot layer of early Persian period material, Dr. Matsar discovered a Babylonian layer. This clearly related to the earlier Babylonian period, circa 586 to 539 BCE. A number of significant finds appeared in this stratum. Directly under the Babylonian stratum was the thick destruction layer corresponding to the fall of Jerusalem, including many bronze and iron arrowheads. This layer included the bulla, that which is a seal, of the biblical prince Gedaliah, son of Pashur. So later she actually found another bulla of Yehukel, son of Shelemiah, very close to where she found the other one. Now, a bulla was a small seal to impress in some kind of wax or clay representing an administrative official or king, like a signature. Now, what was the significance of these names, Gedaliah and Yehukel? Or, as we would say, Jukel with a J? The prophet Jeremiah speaking of the officials in this era, right before the Babylonian captivity, says, "Now Shephatiah the son of Mattan, and Gedaliah the son of Pashur, and Jucal the son of Shelemiah, and Pashur the son of Malchijah, heard the words that Jeremiah was speaking to all the people." Okay, now brace yourself. Out of the ground came two engraved seals not far from each other in the same historical layer: Gedaliah the son of Pashur, and Jucal the son of Shelemiah. Two biblical names. Well, actually, four biblical names from one verse. Now, recently we translated the Yehud coins, so that has warmed us up to these small seals. So let me try to quickly affirm these seal letters, just to make sure they got it right, of course. Okay, here is that first seal, which says to or belonging to Gedaliah, son of Pashur. Okay, you can see the Old Hebrew letters. This is written from right to left. So let me go down. This first letter, Lamed, which just means it's a prefix attached to the word meaning to or belonging to. The next letter you can see is a Gimel, and it is a G sound. And then a Dalet, which is a D sound. So you have Ged, but you might be wondering, where's the E? Well, ancient Hebrew, as well as modern Hebrew, the vowels were more memorized and just known by those who speak the language. Just like we could read this, right, without our English vowels. This is kind of how the Hebrew language worked. So you can see above, it really says most English speakers can understand without vowels. Well, that's just an illustration. So let's go on. So we have another Lamed for the next one. So Gedel, and then a Yod. We've run across this letter before. So Gedaliah, kind of a Y sound, followed by a Hey, which is an H sound. So Gedaliah, and with the final letter, a Vav or a Vow, with an U sound here. So Gedaliah, or we would say Gedaliah. And on the bottom it says Ben, son of, and then it says Shelemiah. I'll skip that for now. All right, here's the other seal that was found. Yehukel, or we would add that French J in there that has come in our language, Jukel, or Jehukel. And we could do the same thing and go across and read this according to the letters, but I better not take time for that here. All right, back to this quote. The preserved section of Nehemiah's wall, uncovered by Dr. Matsar, tapers out at the summit of the stepped stone structure, continuing south along the same line. However, a related section of the wall appears. The fact that the southern tower was built on top of houses destroyed by the Babylonians, circa 586 BCE, and therefore dates to sometime after the 6th century BC destruction, further proves that it was part of Nehemiah's wall. The most logical conclusion is that all three edifices, the southern tower, northern tower, and the wall connecting them over the stepstone structure, are part of Nehemiah's wall. So they didn't just find a tiny little part of the wall, but a whole section. 1 year before she discovered the wall, Dr. Matsar, like a modern Nehemiah, described her approach to archaeology. I work with the Bible in one hand and the tools of excavation in the other, and I try to consider everything. Perhaps it is fitting that her excavation and identification of the wall took as long as it did for Nehemiah to build it. Despite opposition, as Dr. Matsar has said before, in the end the stones speak for themselves. Nehemiah couldn't have said it any better himself. So I can't say enough good about Dr. Eilert Matsar. So many important finds. But I think the most beautifully stunning was the gold menorah pendant with other gold jewelry and about 36 rare gold coins, found just barely below the surface in what was a Byzantine building in Jerusalem in the AD 500s. It probably hung around the Torah scroll in their synagogue. Now, this kind of find, with all this golden jewelry, archaeologists just dream about. Next week, Lord willing, we enter chapter 8, this time of the Jewish feast and revival. Thanks very much.